Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishwaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Gukarastvandakaro Vai Rukarastu Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, the general topic that we are, let me put these lights on, just one second. So the general topic that we are pursuing is the importance and necessity of inquiry into my real nature, Atma Vichara. So there we said that the advice given by the preceptors of Advaita Vedanta is that you should be going beyond being a perennial student. So the perennial studentship means that you just let the Guru handle the teaching and you are content in following the teaching and you're happy with it, otherwise you would not be pursuing it. But you don't want to go anything beyond that. You just want to keep learning. So what is pointed out is that that is not the correct attitude. The learning should be a intermediate path. Following a guru is an intermediate path. But ultimately, you have to put it together for yourself. And unless you do that, there will be something missing that will not allow you to gain the full result of what you are learning. There's nothing strange about this. It's the same old example of swimming and bicycling and so on and so forth. Something which is difficult at first and you need the help of some other people to learn how to do it. But you cannot stop saying, I love my swimming lessons. So somebody says, how long have you been taking swimming lessons? Oh, he said, I don't know. I have learned so much from them and so on. So can you now please cross a 50-foot swimming pool without really pausing for breath, breathing naturally? No, I still can't do that. Well, that means that you have not accomplished the goal that you are set out to be. So similarly, in the learning of Vedanta, you have to employ the means so that you can independently gain the results of this Atma Vidya. And this independent gain of Atma Vidya is not possible without Atma Vichara. If you cannot both consciously as well as subconsciously explain exactly what is happening in your life, then that means you still have some work to do. That's all. You cannot declare victory too soon, as all of us do from time to time, because we're happy with the learning to a certain extent. You say, I think I'm done. Well, you may not be done. You may be done. We don't know. Only you will know. But you may not be done if you don't have the right conditions to test you. And that's when you can figure out whether this vidya is has really permeated, and have you absorbed it fully. And so, as the Acharya says, Swami Paramarthananda also says, that really eating is just a beginning of the process. It is not until you digest it that the food will be beneficial to you. Anyway, all this is an ad for Atma Vichara. And we also saw earlier that amongst the various blessings, the Guru, the Ishwara Kripa, Shastra Kripa, Guru Kripa, and then the Atma Kripa. Out of these are not on the same level. All of them are necessary. But really the one that takes you to the final mile, then that means there is some work to be done. Recently in the town that I live, they are trying to do the fast internet through cable and so on and so forth. And so digging cable on major highways and so on is relatively easy, but going through all these neighborhood roads that have to be dug up with a lot of wiring and a lot of other things there, that is the tough one. That is the expensive one. A lot of work has to be done. And so recently in Los Altos Hills, there is an organization that has sprung up which says fiber is the way to go. And can we all get together and do our own fiber? So when they explain all this, not on our fiber means the town's fiber. So when they explain this, they say, by the way, in your locality of 20 or 30 or 40 homes, you have to come together and figure out how do you get the fiber from the end point to your own homes. And that is the tough part. That's the expensive part. That's what requires a lot of work. Very similar to that is really the learning of something like Vedanta, where Atma Vichara is necessary. Without that, the final mile would be missing. It will not be there. And we can feel it also. Sometimes you feel, I've been attending classes for so long. Have I really gained the kind of freedom that I was promised? And if you haven't yet, it may be that the teaching has fallen short. But if the teaching is doing okay, what you have to do now is to really absorb it, and the work involved in absorbing it. And that is requiring Atma Vichara. And so there's so many famous passages that talk about this. One of them is Vicharam na sahate. Vicharam na sahate in Sanskritam. So Vicharam means an inquiry, thinking. Na sahate means that it does not tolerate. It just like, it's very interesting that just like supposing you have a cave which has been dark for trillions of years, ever since the very at start of the earth, there are caves that are so dark that light has never reached it. It's total darkness. So the human being sometimes is exactly likened to a cave. How? Because the cave has never seen light until one day some inquiry is made with the help of some flashlights or some more powerful lights. And you cannot say that a 1,000,000-year-old darkness will take 1,000-year-old inquiry for darkness. You cannot say that, because the instant you throw light on this cave, the darkness of the cave goes. Even though it has been there for trillions of years, but it requires a millisecond to remove it. Similarly, here also in our situation, we have had a unlimited ignorance of exactly who we are, what is going on, what is my real nature, what is the nature of Ishwara, what is my connection to the Ishwara. This has been a complete darkness for us. Doesn't matter how many times you take a birth, you live new lives, new relationships, because the lives are pretty much more as a human being. As a human being, you find that the lives have 99% similar things. So, asti, vardate, virparinamite, all these kinds of changes and so on, everybody has to go through that. You're born as a child, then you learn how to eat solid foods, then you learn to crawl, then you learn to stand up, walk, go to school, learn languages. All of that is pretty similar. Some of the places are different, some of the facilities are different, but more or less we just go through the life, having friends, then getting married, having children of our own, then getting old, worried about family, worried about our own health, and then finally succumbing to the body, born all over again, same situation. And so all this time, the self-ignorance remains, the light of your self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is the light, does not penetrate this cave. Guhayam, in the guha of the mind, self-inquiry has not taken place. Since when has it not taken place? Forever. It has never taken place. How long is it going to take for us to remove this ignorance? Instantly. Instantly means maybe just a few years, just a few months possibly. Depends on what your personality is. Doesn't take long. But it does take Atma Vichara. Without that, you can be fooling yourself, and that you can have, as we have said many times before, academically you may be okay. You may have a lot of information, as Swami Tattvavidananda is so fond of saying. There is a difference between information and wisdom. So you may have a lot of information, but if it hasn't transpired into what he says, his words, transformational change in your life, then the light of a self-inquiry has not taken place. So this is what is a very famous statement, Vicharam na sahate, that if one is a samsari, one is beset with all the sukha dukkha in life, if you think that this is what I am all about, it requires some fundamental inquiry, fundamentally safe inquiry, fundamentally effective inquiry, not just Swami Dayanand used to mock this process sometimes, that we all just sit down and we meditate and Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Namah Shivaya. I feel good about it, and meditation is good, and I repeat it, and so on. And but really, this is not this meditation not accompanied by self-enquiry, or as one of the students I'm having a discussion with on this point, is that the enquiry on the nature of the God is also a self-enquiry. Ultimately, it is also a self-enquiry. So unless this is done, then you can keep on just feeling good about quietening your mind and so on, but the falseness of the jiva remains. That I'm a limited being, until that is inquired into and dispelled eventually, nothing is going to happen. So, the importance and necessity of self-enquiry, Atma Vichara. So there we just took, this is a very huge topic, and we can go on this topic for a long time, as any topics that we will choose. But here, a particular line of vichara, of thinking, has been suggested to us, and we should look into that. And so that particular method of conducting self-enquiry was suggested by Swami Maheshananji in the sense of what is called an error. Because the basic premise is that I am making a false conclusion about myself as to who I am. A false conclusion, very much like the conclusion that we do in our dream. And so in that manner, the dream is just a starting point, beautiful starting point, that you should be able to see that in the dream, it doesn't appear to be false. But outside of the dream, then the whole thing, it becomes falsified. Similarly, it is suggested that my way of conducting my life appears to be very true. True in the sense that I am a jiva, I am a limited being, I am born at a particular time, I am going to die at some point in time. I have a relationship with the world, some dukkha, some sukha, this kind of a samsara. And this I take very seriously. Even if I am not happy with it, there's nothing that I can do. I just go along with it because I think this is it. There's nothing else to be done. Acharya, the Vedantic teaching says no, it's not true. Because take the example of the dream avastha. Just like there also you have this two-stage issue, one when it becomes real, when it appears real, and one when it disappears. Your Jagrata avastha, your waking experience of life is the same. There are differences. This is a little longer than the other. And all these differences are so well brought out in the Mandukya Karika that we have studied, some of us have studied. But basically the conclusion is they are, for most 99.9% of the time, very similar. And we have this is the truth about it that you have to see. So this being the case, I have to conduct an inquiry. If this is really the case, how? So there it says is that both the experiences of dream as well as waking involves adhyasa, involves an erroneous conclusion that has to be ultimately discarded. This is the method of conducting an inquiry. to see that what appears to be true is ultimately false, relatively false. Vicharam na sahate. Once you conduct vicharam, vicharam means an inquiry, you find that it disappears. So similarly, the classic case of the rope and snake, if you take the rope to be erroneously concluded to be a snake, then all that it requires is an inquiry properly with showing the right light and saying, no, this is a mistake. You're afraid for no reason. So this is the premise. This being the premise, the question is, how do we conduct an inquiry? So there, Swami Maheshananji had pointed out that this adhyasa, this erroneous conclusion, adhyasa means erroneous conclusion, taking something which is this to be not that but something else is called adhyasa. Adi Shankara gives it a beautiful definition. Atasmin tadbuddhi. Tadbuddhi means the taking something to be tat of something upon something which is not there. So as we have seen that taking an apple buddhi, if you take an apple to be an apple, there is no adhyasa. But if you take a pear to be an apple, then it is an adhyasa. So here, if we really think that myself as a person who is changing and endowed with the body, mind and so on, this is who I am, and this is the truth about it, then there is nothing else you can do about it. Do you just take it for yourself? But if this is something different than who I am, then we can say this is an adhyasa. And so Vedanta points out that you're taking to be a jiva taking yourself to be a jiva is an adhyasa. It's an adhyasa. It is atasmin tadbuddhi. How that is the case is now conducted, and we will pursue that today a little bit more. So there, Swami Maheshananji pointed out that the adhyasa is of two types. One is you take an object different from you, something that you objectify, but objectify wrongly, is called adhyasa. So the same example, that if you take a pear to be an apple, then it is adhyasa. But then there is a special form of adhyasa which is really the relevant one for us and a very important one for us, very applicable to us. And this is called tadatmya adhyasa. Tadatmya adhyasa means you don't take something else to be different than what it is. You take yourself to be different than what you are. There's a big difference between taking something else, because we can objectify something, use it for a while, then we are, things can dismissed by us very quickly. We don't have to hang around and be stuck with it. But that's not true of myself. I may have some changes in my body, mind, and so on and so forth, but it's the same body and mind that I've been stuck with for years. This is me. And this is where all the acharyas say that really speaking, you can do some discipline thinking about other things. But none of the disciplined thinking about others is nearly as important as doing disciplined thinking about yourself. So Bhagavad Gita also says that really tapas is the disciplined thinking, tapaha. So tapaha means the ability to withstand problems is called tapaha, right? So Vedanta says that any kind of tapas is good. So normally our tapas is that we keep a fast on certain occasions. So on certain days we find that we make a resolution, we do a sankalpa that on Ekadashi day I will not eat any annam. I won't take any cereal, any rice or anything. I will just eat fruits. It's a kind of a tapas. Or that on a particular day I will not eat solid foods. I will take only juice or water. Tapas. There are different kind of tapas that we do. So all tapas is important. But Gita says out of all the tapas, the mental tapas is the most difficult and the most effective. And the mental tapas means the control and tapas over your own mind. And you should see why, because the outside tapas can come and go. Because even in fasting, most of the days you can eat anything you want to. Only on certain days that you have promised yourself, which is good, that I will not eat such and such things on certain days. But all the other days you can have fun. So that means that the tapas day comes and goes, not stuck with you all the time. But if you're stuck with your own mind, and if the mind is giving you problems, to doing tapas over your mind is 1,000 times more beneficial. Once you conquered your mind means what? What do you mean by conquering the mind? So this is all part of the Atma Vichara. So your mind means, this is really a very interesting and a very beneficial and a very important subtopic. I would say even a main topic. And we all have a laboratory in our life to test it with. Like in any one of these laboratories, what you have to do is to observe a certain set of parameters and analyze it and see how it works. So it was interesting. I was reading I forget what the book was. I think it was it was about the serendipity in science, how things get discovered when actually people were not looking into it. They just happen. And so the advent of penicillin, I believe, is one of those, where there was something was mistakenly left, and it grew to a point where new insights were developed about antibiotics. Anyway, so that was that. But anyway, there was an English scientist whose name I forget, who said that one of the very interesting aspect of my growing up as a child was the experimentation of the importance of oxygen in living beings. And so what he used to do was to take a jar and put different kind of bugs in it. Some small, some bigger ones. And he would close the lid so that no fresh oxygen comes in. And observe how long does it take. In fact, he was told that everybody needs oxygen to live. Your prana requires oxygen. Oxygen means the outside prana becomes your internal prana. That's all. In Vedanta, this is exactly what we say. It's all the same. But the samashti prana. Samashti prana means that this is all created by Ishwara, where there is oxygen in the system, and that oxygen in the system becomes internal to me and then keeps me alive. So it becomes vyashti and samashti. So that's how the outside or inside is. But anyway, what this guy was saying, that some teacher told him that, listen, all beings require oxygen to live. And if you deny oxygen, they only have a small time to live. So he says, I started to experiment. And I would put a bigger bug and some bigger jars, smaller jars. And then I will make a note of it, how long does it take for this bug to die. So he made some kind of a chart and so on and so forth. Then he thought, so he was not given this information by anybody. He discovered it on his own. It was already known by everybody else, but he didn't know it. He decided to do the same thing with a plant. So he took a small sapling which had some dirt, it had some earth and water and so on, so living sapling, and he put it in this jar and he closed the jar just like he did with the bugs. And he went away for a while thinking, when I come back, this plant is going to be dead. It was not dead. In fact, it had grown. He said, that was a complete shock to me. I cannot believe what a difference it is between animals and plants. Because the plants do not depend on oxygen, they actually create oxygen. A remarkable discovery by a young kid. He must have been like 11, 12, 13, I don't remember. But he was just a kid in school when he discovered this. So anyway, so what we need to do is to do a structured inquiry like that as to what is it that I have to do. So there it was pointed out that, listen, the Adhyasa is different when the Adhyasa is on you, because the Adhyasa on you itself is possible. I'm not even aware of that. Whatever I am, I think this is what I am. I'm young, I'm old, I'm white, I'm black, I'm brown. This is what it is. Now I have to look into it as an Adhyasa. So this Adhyasa is a special form of Adhyasa because I am involved, not something else. It's called Tadatmya Adhyasa. Tadatmya Adhyasa. Tadatmya Adhyasa means that the non-recognition of truth on myself. It's a very, very unlikely way of looking at it, but this is a fact. In the last week I had given you the example that Swami Maheshananji had given, that somebody who appears to be a lifelong Democrat, after a while he just hates Democrats. He says those are false people. I don't have anything. In fact, I don't like Republicans, I don't like Democrats. I'm not going to join any party. I'm just going to be independent. And when I referred to you to read these verses number 8 and 9 from Drikdishya Viveka, where Swami Viditatmananda has commented, I hope you had a chance to do that. There, Swami Viditatmanandaji gave even, I think, a more effective Adhyasa, Tadatmya Adhyasa. More something we can easily relate to, which is going to a movie where you identify with certain characters in the movie to such a degree that whatever is happening to that character in the movie happens to you also. I think it's a beautiful example. And so if the movie is about, and usually it is the same gender, it doesn't have to be, but it could be the same gender. So if you're a woman and there is a character in the movie who is a woman character, and the focus is on her life and how the travails of her life and how she's struggling, how people mistreat her perhaps or something, and she's unhappy and so on. And then you relate to her. Anybody can do it. A man can do it as well. But that identification is more tight and real if you happen to see yourself in that position. And as Swami Viditatmananda says, that really your behavior, while that identification is going on, is very interesting, because you may not have taken any Kleenexes with you in your pocket because you were happy and you just wanted to be entertained and you were eating popcorn and all of that. And now you are crying, you're sobbing, and you need some Kleenex. And the person sitting next to you says, "Oh, let me give it to you. I have some extra Kleenexes." And you're not even sorry about it. You are sobbing. Sometimes in movie houses I've seen several people sniffling and sobbing. And you say, well, this is an effective movie. And all that happens is Tadatmya Adhyasa. For a short time it is Tadatmya Adhyasa. And even after the movie is over, it can deeply affect you, because you can relate to the situation that the person was in. And yes, it is not as intense when you come out and you have to now get out of the hall and you have children at home and you get into a car and situations are different. It just goes away, but it leaves a certain vasanas in you. So this is the result of the powerful Tadatmya Adhyasa. Now imagine you are born. See, this is very interesting because if you are a moviegoer, just think about this. If you're a moviegoer, you have a good, solid life that you are identified with. If you're a woman, you know who you are, you've been studying and you have a master's degree and you are now working for a company and you have sisters and brothers and so on. This is what your life is. Some changes and so on, but more or less it's pretty much what it is. All right? So now that identification with your waking life recedes into the background when you are identifying with this character that you are watching on the movie. Isn't it? Because you cannot be crying and sobbing while you have a very clear idea that you are one of the most successful scientists and you've gotten a job in this new biotech company and everybody raves about you and you're being promoted, and in fact you're about to get $1 million from an IPO. That is all forgotten. All put it in the background, and you're now identified with this poor woman, or whatever happens to her in her life. You identify with her. So this is the situation. Imagine now that you are born as a human being. And like any being for that matter, but let's just talk about human beings. As a baby, you have not any established life. You used to have a life, but the way the whole system works is that has been completely obliterated from your memory. Only your Suksma Sharira Vasanas remain. And even those have not really expressed themselves yet as a baby. It will come later. Your Suksma Sharira will come later. But for the time being, no. It's not even available. You have complete ignorance as to who you are. You don't have any set life yet. Swami Dayanand, I remember, he used to, Swami Dayanand, I remember used to talk about this. He says, if you look at a baby, of course now we know from a scientific standpoint and even from a Vedantic standpoint that a lot has happened to the baby while it is in the mother's womb. So there are a lot of thoughts, a lot of expressions and so on. In fact, there is a story in the Puranas, in one of the Puranas, and the story is about, I believe, I mix up because my memory is not that sharp anymore. It was never that sharp to begin with, but now it is really becoming even vaguer and vaguer. So his name was Vamadeva, I believe. I may be wrong. So Vamadeva was a baby and he was a near Jivan Mukta in his previous life. He had pretty much finished everything. But due to some defect, his body gave out before he could complete the Jivan Mukti. So, the Jivan Mukti could not be translated into Videha Mukti. He was not completely independent yet. He still had some doubts and so on and so forth. And he died. But so close was he to the end point that it is said that as a garbha in the womb of his mother, the final thoughts came to him. and he became a Jivan Mukta while he was in the womb of the mother. This is the story. And I am not going to disbelieve it. If it is given in our, even if it is a Puranic story, and it is recited by the Vedantins, to express that really this happens, I have no doubts whatsoever in my mind. Anyway, so going back to the scenario, unless you are a Vamadeva, you are born, and this is what Swami Dayanand used to say, when you're born, you are engulfed in total ignorance and darkness. Who am I? You have no idea. What should I do? No idea. But the only things which is a vasana from your previous life, you can call it samskara or vasana, whatever, is that your sukshma sharira is potentially still very useful. It's still very, very, very intact. And part of the sukshma sharira is that if you like something, you feel okay. If you get something that you like, that's a better way of saying it. Not like you like something. But if you get what you like, you're peaceful and happy. If you do not get what you like, you are unhappy. And there are ways of expressing the unhappiness. This is available in babies. So the babies don't need to be taught. In fact, this is true. They say that if a newborn baby does not cry, it is a problem. There can be some mental issues, some incomplete development. Because a healthy baby is a miracle. So many things can go wrong and do. And all we're worried about is that, I want a boy, I want a girl, this, that, or the other. To get a healthy baby, it's just, you have no idea what things have to go through. Anyway, so the baby knows that I am not comfortable. It doesn't know who I am. All it feels is a discomfort of being born, which is a difficult process. How the baby comes out of the womb of the mother is just amazing. And it is not happy because it could be cold, it hasn't had any food for a while, so it cries. So just look at it. The mind of the baby, the basic instruments of the minds of the baby are intact. And in fact, it's interesting. This is why I'm really enjoying teaching this class on Tuesday night, because I can bring in examples and so on as it happens, and then so I can stick to the main topic per se, but I can go back and forth to embellish that. And it's a lot of fun for me. I hope you're also okay with it, because you may be saying, why, he's not making a lot of progress on the main topic yet. But hopefully I will. So here, Swami Maheshananji was pointing out the difference between, I can now go into a kind of like a subtopic, if you may. But I will come back to it and then I will proceed on the main highway a little bit later. But let me pursue this subtopic. So this subtopic is in fact, the connection of the subtopic to the main topic is that there is a fundamental difference between animals and human beings as created by Ishwara. Very deliberately created by Ishwara. But we should see the fundamental difference. The fundamental difference is that whatever the animal needs, whatever information and capability that an animal needs in order to pursue a life is already given to it for most part from the previous birth. So there is no necessity for teaching except for some minor things. Like there are animals where the parents of the animals have to show them how to be safe by crossing the road quickly. And they don't do a very effective job because some of the offsprings do get killed in the process. And so they do the best they can, but they try. So the mother also tries to give love to the kids, to her offsprings and so on, cuddles them and so on. But in terms of the basic skills required to fly for a bird are not taught by the mother and father. It all comes from the previous DNA. And so that is really what characterizes the life of an animal, is that whatever capability and information you need in order to lead a life, is automatically given by Ishwara from the previous life. This is why a spider can immediately learn how to create a web. A bird can immediately learn to fly. Doesn't have to be taught. This is the animal kingdom. The human kingdom is entirely different. And it's different, fundamentally different, because even though some of the tools that you have, like your subtle body, your sukshma sharira, your reaction to whether you're getting things of your like or dislike, are inherent in the system. That much is for sure. But how to utilize it, how to bring it out, how to develop it, all requires teaching. All requires teaching. And the baby, unlike the human baby, unlike the animal baby, is not equipped to grow into its full growth stage without so much tutoring, so much help, so much learning, so much teaching. Very different. The advent of the human being is a major event in the life of a jiva. Major event. So in fact this is what is called both Siksha and Diksha. So we've talked about that before. I'll bring it in here as part of this discussion as well. So Siksha means instructions, teaching, how to do things. And it's really fun to see. I have a almost 8.5, 9-month-old baby granddaughter. It's really fun to see how the parents are slowly guiding her. And she's improving. Just a month ago, she could not even crawl. And now she's crawling so fast that, and it requires a lot of teaching. Because she would raise one of her hands, but her knees, she could not tell whether the knees could be supported, so she would fall down. And so slowly she was taught, now listen, you can actually prop yourself up not only from your hands but also your feet. So your whole body is a little bit above the ground. And you can now move one of the knees in front and then the other. All that requires was a lot of patience, a lot of teaching. Now she's become a wonderful crawler, very fast. And now she wants to stand up. So standing is another very big thing. She's very wobbly, she falls down. Also all kinds of siksha has to be given. Then comes Diksha. And Diksha is fundamentally different from Siksha. What Diksha is Siksha which is not available in your normal conduct of life. Cannot be done by any parents, cannot be done by any other normal teacher. This is why the word guru is given to people who are capable of giving diksha. Because the word guru is now being misused. It's been adopted by the West. Everybody is a guru. There is a sports show on 95.7, and one of the characters there is called Guru. And I don't know, but he must have been given the name because he knows a lot. And so he was given the name Guru, and his name has become Guru. So what does Guru says? So Guru says, I think that Steph Curry is going to break it in the next, some topic or the other that goes on. So anybody is saying, but the Guru is a special term meant for a person who teaches, who learns first and then teaches something that is not available in this world. And one which is not visible in this world. One which is not through pratyaksha anubhava, not through anumana anubhava, but through some words that give you an insight as to who you are. In fact, the word Govinda, is used for a guru. Actually, Guru means the Adi Guru is Ishwara. So really the word Govinda refers to Ishwara. And the rest of the teachers that teach Vedanta are simply students of that Ishwara Govinda. But the word Govinda is an interesting one. You can look at the etymology of that. Govinda, of course, means the one who is Krishna. Krishna is called Govinda because who protects all the cows. And this is a different way of looking at it. We'll go into that some other time. Is called Govinda. But Another meaning of the word Govinda is Gobhihi Vindate iti Govinda. So this is a name for Ishwara. This is a name for Brahman, Govinda. And this is a word for Brahman for the following reason. You know, sometimes when you're doing achamanam, when you're trying to purify yourself before doing any mantras, so you take some water and you say, Om Achyutaya Namaha, Om Anantaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha. These three are considered to be the most important three achamanams. Achyutaya Namaha, Anantaya Namaha, and Govindaya Namaha. So if you want to just digress for a second and look at all three of them, Achyutaya Namaha means one which never decays. Never decays. This is the Atma, as we will see more and more. Atma is not something that ever decays. There's no chuti for it. Chuti means one disappearance or even changes or anything. It remains unaffected and the same. Then, Anantaya Namaha. Anantaya Namaha means one which is not limited in any way. There is no anta for it. Not space-wise, not time-wise, not vastu-wise. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Ananta, Anantaya Namaha. Same thing. Brahman, the Atma, is Achyutaya Namaha, is Achyutaha, is Ananta. Then comes Govindaya Namaha. And why is it called Govindaya Namaha? Gobhihi Vindate Jnayate iti Govinda. So Gobhihi means, go can means either cow or it can means words. The proper enunciated sound for words is called go. So Gobhihi means through words. It's the fifth from words. You can either use third case or fifth case. By words or from words. One which is known through words is called Govinda. This is a very interesting thing. Because I am not just pratyaksha anubhava. It's not as though I need to have an experience about myself. I already have the experience. And it's not as though I'm far and I have to be brought near. I don't have to use any logic or anything like this. Mere words reveal, hey, that Ishwara that you talk about, Tat is Tvamasi. So this is called Govinda. So the Govinda is a word for Atma, is for the self. for Brahman. And it just appears to be so. So this is the thing, we think that the Atma and Brahman and so on is far away. I don't know how to grasp it. It is not far away. It cannot be any nearer than you think. Are you far away from yourself or near yourself? None of the nearness or farness makes any sense in you. You just have not looked at yourself in the way you should look. Tadatmya Adhyasa you have. You have certain misconceptions about your identification. So going back to the example of the baby, so you are totally engulfed in self-ignorance. You don't know who you are, what's happening or anything. Slowly, there is ignorance about yourself and ignorance about other things also. The baby doesn't know right, dark from light, mother from father, friend from foe. There's no foe, but friend from family or not family. Nothing. Toys or no toys, milk or nothing. Has no idea. Slowly, then Siksha is given. And Swami Dayanand used to say that slowly the darkness of the baby is dispelled. And when it receives the milk, which is really the most important food, only food for it. This is why the mother's milk and any other milk which is equivalent to the mother's milk is a complete food. No growth in the human being is as fast as the baby's growth. None of the parts of the body grow as fast as at that time. And what comes from it is from milk. And slowly it recognizes milk. And it wants it. In our granddaughter's case, it is so interesting. Because one of the things that the parents have to recognize is, what does the baby really want? Because it has no way of saying, I'm hungry. So it cries the same way whether it is hungry or it is doing this or the other. So now you have to figure out, so I see them, my son and the daughter-in-law, they'll say, either she's very tired because there have been too much interaction with people and they want, every baby has to go to sleep every 2-3 hours. So either she's tired or they will say, I think she's hungry. And now pretty soon, in the beginning it wasn't sure whether she's hungry or not. Now it's very interesting. You bring a bottle of milk and observe her reaction. If she is very hungry, she starts to sort of make some movements and saying, I want that. She doesn't point it, but she's sort of like says, yes, she's hungry. Or if she doesn't even look at the milk and looks at other things, then means she's not hungry. So now, one by one, her darkness is getting dispelled. And pretty soon, in fact, this is the most important thing that happens in the advent of the human baby as compared to the advent of the animal babies is, they smile. This is a very interesting event. In the entire animal kingdom of trillions of different forms, there is no expression of a smile. And before that, before the advent of the smile in a baby, you can say the baby is much more like a animal baby, because the animal baby also wants to be comfortable. Human baby wants to be comfortable. Animal baby wants food. The animal baby, all of that. But there comes a point where there is a radical departure, and that is when the baby is really a fascinating thing. Smiles. I was just observing it and saying, my God, what happens? These lips become different. The expression becomes different. Nothing else has changed. It's a very pleasant thing. And everybody was so jealous of me, because when we were vacationing together, I spent 10 days, and I really spent a lot of time holding her, and I could tell when she was getting bored. I would take her and show her things and so on. Pretty soon she started to recognize me. So even when I was holding her, she would look up to me and say, "Who's this guy?" And pretty soon she gave me more smiles than anyone else. My wife was also jealous. She says, "How did you do that?" I says, "Well, I worked hard." So there is a recognition that comes. Slowly, 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 their darkness goes. But here's a situation. In most cases, the darkness of things other than themselves goes. Knowledge of food, knowledge of languages, knowledge of who's my mother, father, all of that, all that comes. The darkness goes, darkness goes. So unless the words are spoken by someone who knows there is something beyond all that, which is called the Atma, that darkness remains. Nothing dispels it. You may become a president of the country. You may become one of the most famous scientists of the world. You may be a famous doctor, anything, but the self-ignorance has never been removed. That requires Diksha. Govindaha. Gobhihi vindate iti Govindaha. And all that requires is now, the first thing that is required is the method of doing Atma Vichara. So I'll close this by, which I started, I mentioned that I didn't quite complete it, is that in the case of this lady who was watching a movie, she already knows another life, and a good life. And she is unhappy at the temporary identification with a character who is suffering, and this character is crying, and so you also start crying. But the tears of the identification can be easily removed when she walks out of the movie. Other than some vasanas are left. But most of the time it is done. But in the case of the baby, this is what I was starting with, and I went into a lot of subtopics. There's no life that the baby can come back to. And not only the baby, but also as the baby grows into a toddler, and then a young person, and then adult, and so on. So that non-identification with something is never there. Why? Because the darkness about the self is always there. So in that sense, and this is the only point I want to make, and I'll continue on in the next class, is that in the case of a moviegoer, you have another identity that you can draw from because you know that identity, isn't it? Think about this. Like you go into, supposing you are acting in a drama, that is another identification. And in the acting of the drama, you are playing a character who is suffering. And while you are doing that, you also do very well in crying. But through and through, you know who you are. This is just a play. But that's not the case of a baby and growing into a human being. The identity of the real identity is not being revealed yet. So there's nothing to fall back on. And in fact, you can go through the whole life. But there is. There is another identity. And once you know that identity, then the whole way of looking at things changes. And that identity is so far-fetched. It is not far-fetched in reality, but the way I look at it, I find it to be, I make it so difficult for me. I'm so engulfed in the ignorance that I make it very difficult. It is not. And as this is exactly what we studied in the Kena Upanishad, it's not at all difficult. But a method has to be shown as to why it is not difficult. So that's what's called the Atma Vichara. And we never got to it, but we will now hopefully go into the elements of the Tadatmya Adhyasa through Sahajam, Karmajam, and Bhrantijanyam. And hopefully you had a chance to read this in Drikdrishya Viveka, number 8 or 9. If you didn't get a chance to do it, please do so, because we will go back to the study of that in a very structured manner in the next class. Okay with that? With that, I close the class today. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. All right, let us see. Balamani, Darshana, D. Srinivasan, Hila Joshi, Mary Penn, Chris Narayan, Subhash Jain. Hello Subhash, haven't seen you for a while. Gauranga Krishnamurti, Madhavadas, Keshav Chopra, Kate Shrupp. I think I may have, forgive me, but I'm not sure that I recognize your name, Kate. You may have sent me something, I'm not positive. Kalpana Dave, Raj Velpuri, Arvind Taylor, K. Shankar, Sam Dillon. Hello Sam, happy to communicate with you. Satish Jalota, Sulochna Lulla. Hello Sulochna. Lichi, hi Lichi. Maithri Ramakrishnan. Virendra Singh, hello. Krishna Birru. Umid Chopra, Surendra, Shankar Narsiman. So nice to have you all. I'll see if you had any questions about today's class, and I'll wait for it to see if you have time to ask. If not, then we will sign off. Again, what I would request is that if you did have any questions and didn't have a chance to bring it up in this rather limited YouTube format, feel free to give me an email. Several of you do, and I talk to you about it. So that's a good method. We can have a separate conversation. And I feel that in many cases, if it is a topic that many of the others will gain from, then I would talk about in the next class. Or we can just leave it to just you and I. So feel free to do that if you want. Don't see any more questions today. So with that, I take your leave and hope to see you next week. Om